Something is happening to the animals of Earth that nobody planned, and almost nobody noticed. They are changing when they live, not where,
Not how. When.
Animals that spent millions of years active during the day are quietly, invisibly, shifting their entire lives into the dark. And the reason is us. Not our cities. Not our pollution. Not our climate. Just our presence. Our movement. Our noise. The simple fact that we are there. To understand what this means, you have to understand what time actually is for an animal. Not a clock. Not a schedule. A biological architecture built over millions of years around the rhythm of light and dark. Every cell in every animal body has a clock. It controls hormone release, body temperature, digestion, reproduction, immune function, sleep. This is called the circadian rhythm, and it evolved in lockstep with the rotation of the Earth. Day animals evolved their entire biology around daylight hours. Hunting during the day, mating during the day, raising young during the day. Night animals evolved the opposite, every system tuned to darkness. These two worlds, the day world and the night world, existed in parallel for hundreds of millions of years. And they barely overlapped. Then humans arrived. And for the first 300,000 years of human existence, we were a daytime species. We hunted during the day. We slept at night. The night was dangerous and we knew it. Every animal on Earth calibrated its survival strategy around this pattern. Day animals avoided humans during the day. Night animals had the darkness to themselves. It was an imperfect arrangement, but it was stable. Then, roughly 200 years ago, something changed everything. Artificial light. First fire, which humans had always had. But fire was dim and local. Then gas lamps. Then electric light. Then streetlights. Then cities that never go dark. And humans stopped being a daytime species. We began working at night, moving at night, making noise at night. The darkness that every nocturnal animal had relied on for millions of years began to disappear. And simultaneously, the daytime that every diurnal animal depended on for safety began to fill with human presence. Animals were being squeezed from both ends of the clock. And they did what animals do when the environment changes. They adapted. But this adaptation came at a cost that science is only now beginning to measure. In 2018, a landmark study published in Science analyzed over 60 species across 6 continents. The finding was unambiguous. Animals near human activity are becoming significantly more nocturnal. Not just slightly. An average increase of 1.36 times more nocturnal activity in areas with high human presence. Species that had been active during both day and night were shifting almost entirely into darkness. Mammals, birds, reptiles. It did not matter what the species was. The presence of humans was the single strongest predictor of nocturnal shift across all of them. Not habitat type, not climate, not food availability, human presence. Now let us understand what this actually means for the animals experiencing it. Take the mountain lion in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California. Mountain lions are naturally crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk. In remote wilderness areas, they hunt freely across all low-light hours. In areas near human settlements, their activity has shifted almost entirely to the deepest hours of the night. Not dawn, not dusk. Midnight to 3 in the morning. The hours when even human recreational activity tends to stop. The mountain lion is not choosing these hours because they are optimal. It is choosing them because they're the only hours left. And hunting at midnight instead of dusk comes with enormous biological costs. Prey is less active. Vision is less effective even for a predator adapted to low light. Temperature drops reduce metabolic efficiency. The mountain lion is working harder for less in worse conditions because humans are using its preferred hours. Now, let us talk about what this means for the prey animals. Deer in California had historically used nighttime hours as a refuge. Predators were primarily diurnal or crepuscular. Night was safe. Now the mountain lion has followed them into the night. The deer's refuge is gone. And there is no new safe window because humans are active during the day and predators are active at night. The deer are chronically stressed around the clock. Let us go to the ocean now. Because the nocturnal shift is not just a land phenomenon. Artificial light penetrates the surface of coastal and shallow water ecosystems, and it is disrupting biological systems that have run on light-dark cycles since life began in the ocean. Coral spawning events are triggered by moonlight, specifically, the precise spectral signature of a full moon reflecting off seawater. Artificial light from coastal developments emits a similar enough spectrum to confuse the trigger. Coral reefs near heavily developed coastlines show significantly disrupted spawning synchrony, instead of the entire reef spawning together in one coordinated event, which maximizes fertilization rates and overwhelms predators. Individual corals spawn at random times, alone, with dramatically reduced reproductive success. The light told the reef it was time, but it was lying. Sea turtles navigate by the light gradient between the dark land and the brighter sea at night. For millions of years, the sea was always the brighter direction. The land was always dark. Now coastal development has reversed that gradient in many locations. Hatchlings emerge and head toward the lights of a parking lot instead of the ocean. They follow the signal perfectly. The signal is just pointing the wrong way. This is the nocturnal shift at its most visible, an ancient navigation system failing because we changed the inputs. Now, let us talk about birds. Because artificial light is doing something to migratory birds that is devastating. Most migratory birds navigate using star patterns during night flights. Billions of birds migrate at night, using the fixed positions of stars as their compass. This system has worked without interruption for tens of millions of years. Then cities began glowing brighter than the stars they navigate by. Birds flying over illuminated cities become disoriented. They circle the light sources, sometimes for hours, sometimes until exhaustion kills them. An estimated 1 billion birds die from building collisions in North America alone every year. The majority happen during migration, at night, in illuminated cities. The birds are not failing to navigate. They are navigating by the brightest light available. We just changed which light was brightest. Now, let us go back to land. And to one of the most surprising findings in this entire field. Urban animals, animals that have lived near humans long enough to adapt, show a different pattern. They're not just shifting to night. They're becoming more flexible across the entire clock. Urban foxes in London have been documented napping at noon on park benches. Urban crows have learned that garbage collection happens at specific hours and adjusted their foraging accordingly. Urban deer in some cities are active at hours that match gaps in traffic patterns. These animals are not just avoiding humans. They are reading human schedules. They have internalized the rhythms of human civilization and are navigating around them with precision. This is one of the fastest behavioral adaptations ever documented in wildlife biology. Not genetic, behavioral, cultural, even. Young urban animals learn the human schedule from their parents. The information passes between generations without any change in the genome. But outside the cities, the adaptation is slower, and the cost is higher. Animals in wilderness areas near roads, trails, and recreational zones, but not near cities where human schedules become predictable, are experiencing the worst of both worlds. Human presence disrupting their daytime hours, natural predators disrupting their nighttime hours, and no predictable schedule to adapt to. Now, let us talk about what chronic sleep disruption does to an animal body, because this is where it gets serious. Sleep is not optional. It is not a luxury. It is a fundamental biological maintenance process. During sleep, the immune system repairs damage. The brain consolidates memory. Hormones reset. An animal forced to shift its active hours is also forced to shift its sleep hours. And sleeping during the wrong part of the light-dark cycle is not the same as sleeping during the right one. The circadian system, the cellular clock in every organ, is still running on the old schedule. The animal is functionally jet-lagged.
Permanently.
Chronic circadian disruption in mammals causes measurably reduced immune function, reduced reproductive success, shorter lifespan, higher susceptibility to disease. These are the same effects measured in human shift workers. The biology is identical. We have just been documenting it in humans for decades and ignoring it in wildlife until recently. Now here is the part that should make everyone who has ever gone hiking stop and think. The nocturnal shift is not driven primarily by hunting, farming, or industrial activity. It is driven by recreational human presence. The 2018 science study found that recreational disturbance, hiking, cycling, off-road vehicles, cause the same magnitude of nocturnal shift as hunting pressure. A family hiking a national park trail on a Sunday morning is exerting the same disruption on local wildlife as a hunter with a rifle. Not because they mean harm, because they are human. And every animal within earshot has 300,000 years of very good reasons to be afraid of that sound. Now, let us talk about what happens to ecosystems when the clock of life is disrupted. Because the timing of animal activity is not just personal. It is ecological infrastructure. Pollination depends on synchrony between plants flowering and pollinators being active at the same time. Predator-prey relationships depend on activity overlap between species. Seed dispersal depends on fruit-eating animals being active when fruits are ripe. When you shift one species' activity clock, you disrupt every relationship it has with every other species. The mountain lion shifting to midnight hunting also shifts the deer's behavior, which shifts the vegetation the deer would have grazed during daylight hours, which shifts the insects that depended on that vegetation pattern. One clock change cascading through an entire ecosystem. Now here is what makes this problem different from almost every other environmental challenge we face. It is invisible. You cannot see a shifted activity clock. You cannot photograph the absence of a deer at 3 in the afternoon. You cannot point to a body of water and say this river is 1 hour more nocturnal than it was 30 years ago. The damage is written in time, not space. And we do not have good instruments for reading time damage.
But we are building them.
Acoustic monitoring can now track when species are active across entire landscapes, continuously, automatically. GPS color data is giving us hour-by-hour activity maps of individual animals across years. Camera traps with timestamps are building libraries of before and after that span decades. The data is emerging, and it is telling a clear story. The clock of life is shifting faster than any previous natural process has shifted it. And in some places, there are already signs that it can be shifted back. National parks that turn off non-essential artificial lights at night show measurable recovery of natural activity patterns within months. Wildlife corridors designed to minimize human activity at dawn and dusk, the hours animals most need for critical biological functions, show significant improvements in species diversity and activity health within years. The lockdown of 2020 gave us the sharpest natural experiment we have ever had. Within weeks of human activity dropping, animal activity patterns began returning toward their historical norms. Not in years, in weeks. The clock wants to go back. It just needs us to stop overriding it. The nocturnal shift is not a fixed destination. It is a response. An ongoing negotiation between the oldest biological rhythms on Earth and the newest force ever to disrupt them. The animals did not choose the night. We pushed them there. And every morning when the sun comes up, there are animals that would move into that light, that have moved into that light for millions of years, waiting for the sound of us to stop. The clock of life is still running. It just needs a little silence to find its rhythm again.